Transitioning to museums from corporate, what I found that I really liked about that was the dual purpose of mission and business-based revenue. I mean, museums exist to serve the public, but at the same time, they also have revenue goals to sustain their mission. And right now, across the industry, there's this institutional mandate to expand access just beyond the elite, beyond the highly educated, beyond white Caucasian, just everyone. But it's also a moral imperative. So I think what's been attractive about these organizations, museums, nonprofits, is embracing organizations that embrace this DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility initiatives all at their core. So at the Barnes, before I joined the Penn Museum, I was there for 7 years and launching 20 plus exhibitions, doing marketing campaigns for those shows. What I've loved the most, or my favorite ones, were the ones that raised underrepresented voices. And guess what? They're women or artists of color. Like with the Morisot exhibition, she's not as famous as Manet because she was a woman. And during her time, her contributions were just not taken as seriously. So that was pretty interesting to tell that story. For 30 Americans, it included an artist, Kehinde Wiley, who everybody will know, recognized as the commissioned artist for Barack Obama, who did his presidential portrait. I joined the Penn Museum just a year ago during the pandemic. And what do museums like that do when your building is closed and you still need to sustain your mission and welcome the public? So like many museums around the world, there was this big, mad rush to pivot to digital and bring virtual experiences. It was a big challenge. It was a big experiment for everyone, but it was also a great way to be able to do this and just continue connecting with all of our audience. I think with the height of racial and social reckoning, I feel like in all the underpinnings of Black Lives Matter, another layer was that movement Stop Asian Hate, as if race was responsible for a virus. And when that was all culminating, one of Penn's responses was to create this grant for AAPI artists and creative practitioners, and really thankful to have our project selected to create a children's book of Indigenous Philippine tales. And, the project was really sparked by conversations that we've had as moms raising our kids outside of the Philippines, exactly like you, Marie. And they're growing up away from their home countries. When Chloe was younger, she would ask me about, tell me like a Filipino story. And I only knew a handful. Why are our stories, Indigenous Filipino stories, pre-colonial, not part of the mainstream? And maybe it's just because they're not as accessible, or they just haven't had as big of a platform. So our plan for the book is to do a retelling of 8 pre-colonial Indigenous stories, 8 symbolizing the 8 provinces that rose up against Spanish colonial rule. We're dedicating this project to the children of the Filipino diaspora. That we're both raising our kids outside of the Philippines, but we're also both working moms outside of the Philippines. I'm sure everybody would love to hear about the impact of communications for you that it's had, not just on your work, but maybe on your personal value.
Living in Sydney, we're exposed to so many different cultures, and I feel fortunate to work for a company like Ogilvy that really champions a diversity agenda. In our work, we have the ability to make an impact when it comes to choosing talent to ensure that the audience we're wanting to reach, which is a very multicultural audience, is well represented. Similarly, when crafting the messaging, we can make an impact by ensuring that the content is going to uplift the discourse. So whether we're selling chicken or technology, I think we have a role to play.
Now that we're old girls, I think the 2 major takeaways was the discipline and the grace. Having that practice in self-possession, and then just trying but failing sometimes to have grace, but always going back to that ability to just have grace under pressure. And there's taking the high road when you can, even though you just really want to crumble, especially during the pandemic, all the stresses of work, life. I think those 2 things stood out for me.
For me, it's integrity and social responsibility. Are 2 things that were really honed, I think, by our years at Assumption. and even more emphasized at home because that's also the way my parents live their lives.
And it just occurred to me that everything that you're saying is really resonating with back to basics. Like, whoever thought 25 years later we'd be asking each other, what's your takeaway from your life and assumption? And it's like it's really going back to the values that were all solidified there.